Hello you guys, I hope you guys are all doing well and having a great day so far. If you guys are new to my channel, then make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on your post notifications. And I know a lot of you guys are not following me on my social media accounts, so pause this video right now and go and find me on Instagram and Facebook. Pause it right now. So today's video, I am going to be doing a story time. A lot of you guys have been really wanting a story time for me, and so today I decided to give it to you. And we are going to be talking about a time when I was 17 years old and I had a police officer actually stalk me and try to date me. This is exactly why I started my YouTube channel, because I had all of these incidents in my life occur as I was growing up, and they were just like, it was almost so much for one person to go through when they were just so young. And that's why I've created this channel, to just kind of put the word out there that I survived these kinds of things. And this initially started when I was kind of hanging out, I guess, in the wrong crowd, and I don't know, I might save that part of the story I might save for a different story time. But I was hanging out in the wrong crowd and an incident occurred that I was involved in, meaning I was just an associate of it, but I wasn't technically, I guess, I don't know, I wasn't the person that was, prosecuted? I don't know if that's the right word. Anywho, so one day I was driving in my vehicle and I had my family member, who was a female, sitting in the back seat. And I see in my rearview mirror that I'm getting pulled over by a police officer. I pull over on the road, and this was a very excluded road. It was up in the mountains. I'm from a very small town in Northern California. It was up in the mountains, and we were kind of on a windy road, and just not many passerbys were around, if any. And we were just like in the woods, and I pulled over, and the police officer comes up. And I'm asking him like, hi, what's the issue? Actually, I was more quiet. I was very quiet and shy back then, and I pretty much did anything and everything a police officer would tell me to do, because I didn't understand like my actual rights. And so I was sitting there in the car, and I recognized the police officer. It was the same exact police officer that had seen me with the whole like association prosecution type thing. I just kind of, but not really, explained to you. So just know that it was the same officer from that situation, and he was at this situation. And so he was looking at me and he was like, hi Nicole, and he was smiling, and I was like, hi. And my family member in the back seat was like, is there an issue? Like, what's going on here? Because my registration was great. I had insurance. I had my license. I wasn't speeding. Nothing was wrong. My lights weren't broken. Nothing. I didn't do anything wrong that I was aware of. And he was like, I need you to get out of the car, Nicole. And he followed me. He said, keep walking. And we walked so far above my car. I don't know the distance, but we were pretty far away. My car kind of looked like it was really tiny. And we kept walking, and he didn't say a word as we were walking. And he starts telling me to put my arms out, and I was wearing a bathing suit underneath, because it's summertime. I was wearing a bathing suit underneath my pants. And he begins to kind of search me, and putting his hands down my pants and up my shirt, and then he heads back to my car. So the family member in my car was like, excuse me, what are you doing searching her without another female officer? Because apparently you need a female to search another female. And so he was like, disregard what I'm doing. It's none of your concern. And he had her step out of the car as well, and he began to search through my items in my vehicle. And I just did not know what was going on. I was just such a pushover back then, and I just didn't say anything because I just didn't know. And so we were just sitting there while he was going through my car, and he found this item in center console on my car, and it was shaped like, it was a shot glass, but it was shaped like a male's body part. And it was a gift from one of my friends, and he was saying like very inappropriate things when he found this. He picked it up and he said, "I bet I know what you do with this, and it's not take shots out of it." And I was like, what? Like, I didn't really say anything. I just looked over at my family member, and we were both like kind of shocked and just sitting there. And then he asked me, "What are you doing the rest of the day?" And I said, "We're just going home. That's where we're headed right now." And then he gives me his card, and he tells me to call him, and so him and I can hang out. And I just didn't understand what was going on at all. Again, I was so young, and so I was like, is that it? Is that why I'm being pulled over? And he was like, "Go ahead and leave. I didn't find anything in your car. I just had a suspicion." And so we get back in the car, and he pulls off ahead of me, and we start driving home. And I'm headed home because my boyfriend Robbie, who's now my fiance, yes, we've been dating for like ever, but he actually was at my house waiting for me, and so I was going to go meet him. He had drove like 2.5 hours from the city to come and see me. He always visited me on the weekends, and so I was headed home to meet him. And I pull up there, and Robbie's still sitting in his car, and I'm like, "Hey, what's going on?" And he's like, "An officer just pulled up at your house." And he got out of his car, and he was looking around the house, and I was sitting out in my car, and he came up and questioned me. I was like, that's so weird, because I just got pulled over by a police officer. And then I had told him what happened, and he was furious already about like the whole searching part and everything. And then I was like, "What did he say to you?" And he said that he pulled up, he came to his car, he's like, "What are you doing here?" And I told him I was waiting for my girlfriend, and he asked like who my girlfriend was, and I said, "You." And he said, "Oh, she'll be here in a few minutes." And then he got back into his car, and then he drove off. And I was like, that is so weird. Like, why would he drive to my house, like knowing that that's like where I was going? Like, I just didn't even know why I was being pulled over or any of that stuff. And so it was just so strange to me that that even like occurred. It was about 3 weeks to a month later after I'd been pulled over, and the aunt that raised me, my great aunt, I was living with her daughter as well, and her daughter unfortunately made like our house a drug house. And so she had a lot of drugs in and out of the house, and she was also a prostitute. And so one evening she had an altercation with one of the guys, and my great aunt, her mom, had called 911. And after she had done that, I picked up the phone to call my best friend, and I was wondering if I could come and hang out with her, get away from the environment and everything. And so as I'm on the phone, 2 police officers come inside the house, and I immediately recognize one of the police officers, and it's the same one that had pulled me over, and the same one from the previous situation that I briefly mentioned to you guys about me being like associated with people that were getting into trouble. And I had just been like hanging out with them, and I was really not involved in any way possible. And so he tells the police officer he's with just to go sit outside in the vehicle and that he would be out, and he comes walking towards me. I'm on the phone and I like kind of have my back towards him because I want him to go straight to where the people are arguing and fighting, because I have nothing to do with it. And he picks up my phone and just says, "Nicole will have to call you back later," and hangs up the phone. And I'm like, what are you doing? And at the time, I'm like a 17-year-old girl, and basically my best friend is my life. And I'm like, why are you hanging up the phone? And like, I have nothing to do with the situation and what's going on. And he was like, "You're on probation." And I'm like, "I'm on probation? For what?" And he was like, "Follow me." And starts walking down the hallway, and he's like, "Which one is your bedroom?" And I show him which room is my bedroom, and we go in and he shuts the door behind us. So he goes into my room and we're standing there, and he immediately looks at me. He's like, "Why haven't you called me?" And I was like, "What?" And he was like, "Yeah, why haven't you called me? I gave you my card and you haven't called me." And I was just like, I don't know. Again, I just like did not know how to handle the situation because he was a police officer, and I just basically felt like he was like in control of the situation, and I had to do pretty much everything that he said. And he starts going through all of my drawers in my bedroom and finds my underwear drawer. And there he goes, and he starts like pulling out my underwear and saying kind of like rude comments and saying, "Oh, when do you wear these?" and stuff like that. And he's like, "I bet these look nice." And I'm just sitting there very quietly and uncomfortable. And then my great aunt comes in, knocking on the door, and opens the door. And that's where she says, "What are you doing in Nicole's room? The situation's out here." And so then he like runs off, and then I run off outside, and my friend picks me up. It's maybe 2 weeks later, and I tell Robbie about the situation, and he is furious because he has a cousin in the city of San Francisco, and so he knows like these actions are just not okay. He had asked his family member about what was going on, and yeah, pretty much we determined that it just was not appropriate actions just taken by this police officer. And one weekend, Robbie had come up to see me again, and we had one of my good friends there with us as well. And we just got done eating dinner from, I don't know what restaurant it was, but we ended up coming home, and my great aunt comes up to me and says, "You know, that police officer stopped by again." And I was like, "What? Why did he stop by again?" And Robbie like immediately was just like heated because he was so angry. He's just thinking like, "Oh, the police officer stopped by again and I'm here?" Like he was like in fight mode. And I was like, oh gosh. But anyways, my great aunt said that, yeah, he said he was looking for you, but he noticed your car wasn't out front, so he said he would come back later. And Robbie was like, oh great, he's gonna come back again. Now I'll really get to talk to him and see what's going on. And so it was not even, I want to say like an hour later, and there's a knock at the door, and me, my friend, and Robbie are hanging out in my bedroom. And my aunt comes back and she's like, the police officer is here for you again. And I just was like, what the hell? And so Robbie was like, no, you stay here. I'm gonna go out there and talk to him. So I stayed in the room, and he like beat me to the door because I, of course, was not gonna stay in my room. I needed to see what was going on. And so he went out in front and he starts talking to him. He's like, what are you doing searching searching my girlfriend, you know, without somebody else there? What are you doing stopping by here? What's the reason that you're here? And the police officer had his little friend with him, the other police officers there. So there were 2 of them there, and it was the same one from the previous time. And we were all standing there, and he's like, I didn't come to talk to you, Mr. Tough Guy. I came to talk to Nicole. And he's like, Nicole, I want to talk to you. And he's like, I want to talk to you by yourself, Nicole. And Robbie was like, if you need to talk to Nicole, you can talk to her in front of all of us, you know? Why do you need to talk to her by yourself? You can talk to her, like, with everybody around. And so he was like, fine, I'll talk to you over here. And then he starts, like, getting very awkward and, like stumbling and struggling and with his words. And he starts saying, Nicole, I've been driving past here today and I smell a large amount of marijuana coming from your house. Is this, like, what do you know about this, pretty much? Or, like, what do you have to do with this? And Robbie was like, don't you think you should be talking to the head of the household about what's going on? Because, like, Nicole has nothing to do with this whatsoever. And you could see, like, his friend, I don't want to call him his friend because it's the other police officer. The other police officer starts, like, smiling and laughing. And you could just tell, like, he was just, like, so confused by what this other officer was saying, because he knew that he was lying. Like, my aunt had her daughter who was always the one in trouble, who made that house into a drug house, but I can always tell you that just, like, marijuana was not the drug that she had in and out of that house. If marijuana was the only drug in the house, then that house wouldn't have turned into the hell that it did, and it just wasn't the drug of choice, I want to say. And it's hard to explain because I mean, he could say, yeah, I know this house has drugs in it or whatever, but for him to say, oh, I was just driving by and it smelled like marijuana and I wanted to come and talk to you. Like, you can't do that. And so Robbie told him, he was like, I have a family member who's a cop, a real cop in the city, and I know you're not allowed to be doing these things. I mean, you stop by here only when Nicole's car is here. You've asked her to call you, to come and hang out with you, to even, like, he brought up dinner, to even, like, have dinner, to do these things, and it's just not appropriate. And then Robbie was like, if you don't knock it off, we're gonna call basically your superior and you're gonna get in trouble. And the officer started laughing and he left. And then I had mentioned the entire situation to my supervisor at my current job, and her dad actually used to work for the police department, and so she knew of this particular police officer, and she knew, I guess this officer also had a father that worked in the police department, and both of them had records of getting into trouble. And so her dad ended up contacting the officer and told him to basically to knock it off or his job's at risk. And he ended up crying to him and telling him, fine, I'll leave her alone, I'll back off. And I guess later we found out that his father, the police officer's dad that worked for the police department, had gotten in trouble for, like, sleeping with the female inmates. And the officer that had been coming by my house and everything had previously gotten in trouble for stalking people. And because he was doing inappropriate things, like searching me, but, like, doing it to a very inappropriate extent, because he was very much touching me as he was searching me and making sexual remarks about things and just not doing anything that was completely necessary by a police officer. It was just an entirely just uncomfortable situation, and I am thankful that I actually had people in my life at the time that really stepped up and really made me understand that everything that was going on just was like not professional and was not okay, because I was such a quiet person and always stuck to myself and just a pushover with everything, that I was just like, hey, if this police officer says this, then obviously it's true. He must have the right to say and do these things. And now that I'm older, I absolutely know that that was not okay. And this is something that just kind of blew my mind, because there's so many people out there that take advantage of their jobs. And I just wanted to let you guys know that even somebody, you know, as high and mighty as a police officer, there's some people out there that are scandalous, and they do try to take advantage of their position and their authority. But you as a person have to know your individual rights. And so that is so important. And as a female, it could be a little bit scary when you have just like this authority making these comments to you, and I don't know, in a sense trying to brainwash you that it's okay for them to do. But that is that story. There will probably be a lot more details of the entire thing in my book that is coming out this July. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this story time, and I will be talking to all of you guys shortly. And remember, if you're going through anything super hard in your life right now, you got this, you can get through it, and I will be talking to you guys soon. Bye.
Looking down the ground, shadows make no sound.